Welcome to another episode of Positive Solutions for Life. This is Peggy Meyer. Today's guest is Christine Trimpe. Christine is a transformative wellness leader dedicated to empowering professional Christian women to reclaim their health and vitality through her faith-based holistic approach to weight loss. As the founder of SugarFreed Me Method and a certified sugar license practitioner, Christine helps clients achieve lifelong healing from sugar addiction and food-related struggles. Her clients experience dramatic transformations, including sustained weight loss and breakthroughs in physical, emotional, and spiritual health, with over 80% retention in her programs. Christine's own weight loss journey has been highlighted in leading wellness magazines, including Women's World and First for Women, and featured on dietdoctor.com. So, welcome to the podcast, Christine.
Thank you for having me, Peggy. I'm overjoyed to be here with you today.
Oh, I am excited because I feel like I do have a sugar addiction. Now I get it into place, certain times, and then certain times it goes out of whack. But I am excited for you to share what you've learned and stuff. So with that, can you start the conversation by sharing just a little bit more about you, your personal journey, and how it has led to where you are today?
Awesome. I'd love to. So, speaking about sugar addiction, I never would have said that about myself 10 years ago, right around this time. I went on an anniversary trip with my husband, and not as a food or sugar addict, but we went to Rocky Mountain National Park, and he really wanted to do a bunch of hikes and a bunch of climbs, and it was just going to be a great time of spending time together. I love the mountains, and so we went to this one trail marker. He wanted to climb up to Nymph Lake, and I went to the trailhead and I saw the sign and it said half a mile. And I thought, okay, I can do half a mile. I can do half a mile, right? Well, I got about halfway up that trail and I could not go another step. I was gasping for air. I was exhausted. And I told my husband to go on without me. And he said, "Are you sure?" And I'm like, "Yes, I'm sure," because I just needed to have some time for myself in that moment. And so I sat down on a stump and had this conversation in my mind, thinking, God, I can't go on like this. The reason I couldn't climb is because at that time I was what you would classify as morbidly obese. I was more than 100 pounds overweight. I was going to soon be diagnosed with obstructive sleep apnea and fatty liver disease. I already was diagnosed pre-diabetic, and not to mention just the typical everyday aches and pains and chronic exhaustion of carrying around that extra weight. So in that moment, I sat on a stump on the sidelines. Again, I was always finding myself on the sidelines of life. And I remember just saying a simple prayer like, "God, I just want to feel better. I just want to feel better." At that point, Peggy, I had given up hope of ever losing the weight because I went through 30 years of yo-yo dieting. I would lose a little, gain a lot, lose a little more, gain more.
Mhm.
So I pretty much had given up hope of ever living at a healthy weight. But I came home from that mountain trip, that mountain experience with something, a new resolve that had settled in my heart. And I call it like my no plan B
Mhm.
moment.
Mhm.
And I went home and I did something that I had been putting off for 10 years, specifically getting a sleep study. I promised my husband that I would do that when I would get home because I thought that would be a great first step in taking control of my health. And sure enough, it was. And so came home from that Rocky Mountain trip and stepped into this health and wellness journey. And that was about 10 years ago. So I've been doing this for quite a long time now. But it's my absolute pleasure to be able to share like the hard parts of my story to help encourage your listeners today.
Yeah. And when you said that, I would totally relate because we love going to the Rocky Mountains.
Hmm.
And we have been on that trail.
Yes.
And
Good.
I remember, I mean, I think, is that the one? I pretty think that was the one that has maybe three lakes. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah. And so I remember going up on that and like I was dying. I mean, I felt like I was in good shape, but I had I had been a couple years off of a knee surgery and
Mhm.
can't remember exactly when we went, but I think COVID was like I had COVID before that, and so it was like my lung capacity was awful, but I know
Yes.
what that is, but I
Yeah.
also feel like, dang, I did have to take a break and they were waiting
Yes.
for me. And I did not like that. And so after
Right.
that, you need those experiences to kind of
Hmm.
wake us up and shake us up.
Hmm.
And so for you, that was a good like wake up call.
Yes, exactly. And believe it or not, I took a selfie of myself sitting on that stump. And I was just, the selfie is like from my nose up, and I'm just like looking up at the sky. And I look at that, I'm like, what possessed me to take a selfie in that moment? And now I know why, because that was my turning point. That was my take ownership moment. And I knew that that is a huge part of my story.
Yeah, we all need those moments where it's like kind of like draw the line in the sand that, you know, we really wake up to what the reality is. Like we know, in quotes, we kind of know what we need to do, but we
Mhm.
haven't have that real desire, that commitment to make that change. So that selfie moment of
Yeah.
that, I mean, that's like forever, burned into the brain then. I mean,
Hmm.
pictures are awesome because we don't remember specifically, but when we have a picture to remember, like, oh my gosh, that was my draw the line in the sand, not turning back moment. So what then did you do? Like what was your process?
Well, I did schedule that sleep study that I'd put off for 10 years. And I have to tell you, I did not want to come home with a CPAP machine. That's why I had been putting it off for so long. But that CPAP machine was the best medical intervention for a first step for me. And so many people struggle with obstructive sleep apnea when they carry excess weight. But I have to tell you that getting better sleep was really, truly instrumental in me taking that next step, and then that next step, and the next
Mhm,
step.
mhm,
The next steps involved not only was I diagnosed with obstructive sleep apnea that fall, but I started having painful ovarian cyst. So my doctor ordered an ultrasound, and yes, I did have the ovarian cyst, but it was also discovered that I had fatty liver disease, which I wasn't expecting,
mhm,
but it makes sense because I was carrying around 100 extra pounds. And my daughter, or not my daughter, my doctor, she kind of poo-pooed it because she was my gynecologist and she was more concerned about the cyst. But I got really curious, like, why is my liver full of fat? And is this serious? And I did learn that eventually it could turn into cirrhosis of the liver, which was not reversible. But at the stage that I was at with fatty liver disease, it could be reversed. So I got really curious and I went on internet searches for why is my liver full of fat? And I learned something one day that I didn't bookmark, unfortunately, but I just remember reading that sugar is a major hormone disruptor. My liver was full of fat because of my diet that was high in sugar and not necessarily sugar is like the sweet stuff. I wasn't one to sit down and eat like a row of Oreo cookies or a half gallon of ice cream, but my standard American diet was really high in sugar when you consider the refined carbohydrates that I was also eating and the starchy carbohydrates like the bread, potato, and pasta. So that learning that sugar is a major hormone disruptor really set me on a path to wanting to understand something my weight loss doctors and healthcare providers and practitioners had never talked to me about, my metabolic health.
mhm.
So here I go on this journey learning about my metabolic health, about my hormones, and learning that really weight loss is all about your hormonal health. And that was the big awakening that I needed to finally help me lose the weight once and forever. So that's kind of how I got on this journey.
Well, I find it really interesting because you took charge. One, you had that big wake up moment, and then
Mhm.
you took the first step,
Yes.
sleep study. And then, then it turned into looking into fatty liver and the realization that sugar is this big hormone adjuster, just disruptor. And
Yes.
what you're doing is just taking charge of you. Like, and what I heard too is not, you had all these other doctors, but they weren't like they had they wear their hats. You said like the gynecologist was really worried about more of the ovarian cyst than
Yes.
fatty liver because, well, that's the hat that person wears.
Right.
And but we are the expert of us. Like we have to live with us and
Yes.
we know ourselves better than anybody else. So we have to like really step up and take charge of our own health. And you did do some of the work to say, okay, let me see this. Let me see this. So, okay, you learn that sugar is a hormone disruptor.
Yes.
And then what?
Wow, I learned so much scientific based stuff that I never thought I needed in my life, but I'm so grateful that I did because just one little piece of information just put me on this path. I eventually I decided to quit sugar, right? Once I learned sugar is a major hormone disruptor, I swore off the sweet stuff. And then I decided to start reading labels. And then I did that for about 10 months. And my weight loss was really slow. And I was like, this is very unusual because I felt like I was sacrificing a lot and not eating pastries or desserts anymore. And even if I didn't eat them a lot in the past, it still felt like I was
Mhm.
making a huge sacrifice. So I continued to do more research, and then I started researching hormones and fasting. And I landed on that Diet Doctor website that you mentioned in my bio. And that is really, truly what changed my life because I discovered Dr. Jason Fung, who's a nephrologist up in Toronto, and he talks about the key to unlocking our obesity is our hormonal health. And I learned that not only was giving up the sugar, which I did, and I was no longer having sugar cravings, but I was still eating what I thought was healthy in whole wheat bread and baked potatoes and whole wheat pasta.
Mhm.
That's complete sugar. By the time your body digests that, when it hits your digestive tract, it's like, oh, good, we got more sugar.
Yeah.
And so I learned I was still fueling my body all day, every day with sugar, and the excess was being stored as fat, and it was preventing me from losing the weight that I so desperately needed to lose, and also really desired and dreamed to lose for so many years. So that's how, like looking back on all that, my progressive steps, that's how I developed what I call the sugar-freed me method.
Mhm.
And it is like getting off of sugar. And ladies, when I say sugar, I mean sugar, grains, starchy vegetables, bread, potato, pasta. Getting off that completely changed my life. And once I decided to, the day that I quit the day that I quit bread, potato, and pasta, the weight just started melting off. And that's how I was able to lose over 100 pounds and maintain it now because that's still the way I eat. I realize that what is going to work and fuel my body efficiently, it's working for me and it gives me energy every day. It's reversed all of my chronic diseases. So yeah, the sugar-free way of life has just really set me free.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing because a lot of times we get caught up in like the whole like food, marketing schemes. Really,
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know if a schemes is a great word, but I mean, they put like a whole wheat, whole grain, and they use all of these terms that make it sound so good for us.
Yeah.
We've gone through the fat free, now it's like gluten free, but when you look at that stuff, all of it, it's still the stuff that's in those things still gets, in our body, it breaks down into sugars.
Yes. Yeah, and during that time frame too, like shortly after I was diagnosed with that fatty liver disease, I was in a diabetes prevention program because I was pre-diabetic, and so I was in this program to prevent type 2 diabetes. And one of the things that I was doing was every morning I was eating because breakfast is the most important meal of the day. So I was eating a bowl of oatmeal with blueberries and a drizzle of brown rice syrup, which is, supposedly a better sugar, but it was still sugar. And in my book, Sugar Freed, I write about this experience because I went back and I tracked how many carbohydrates, sugar, are in that bowl of oatmeal. And it was 65 grams of carbohydrates that I was starting my day with. I wasn't even hungry.
Yeah.
And now to get to my successful and healthy weight, I typically keep my grams of carbohydrates under 30. To get to my weight loss goals, I kept it mostly under 20. But
Mhm.
now I do like, will eat a little bit more vegetables and stuff. But
Mhm.
yeah, 65 grams of carbohydrates. That's how I was starting out my day, eating while I wasn't hungry. One of the best questions that Dr. Fung asked when I first landed on him was like, "Why are you eating when you're not hungry?" I'm like, "Oh, that's a really great question."
Because the clock says so.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
I mean, a lot of times we don't realize that's the answer, but that's
Mhm.
our routine.
Yes.
Where
Yeah.
somebody says, breakfast, you have to have it within an hour
Right.
of waking
Right.
up because
Right.
your body needs something.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and now that I've switched to being a fat burner, my body is fueled by fat. I do eat a little bit of sugar in my low carb vegetables, and that burns off really quickly. But for the most part, for my energy, my body is running on ketones, which I find much more efficient. I have energy all day. I don't have afternoon slumps because my blood sugar is not crashing and my
Mhm.
body isn't screaming at me. I need more fuel because I have plenty of fuel on my body still, Peggy. I still have weight loss goals, believe it or not. But yeah, it's just such a. I ask my coaching clients or women that come to me and want support. I'm like, they all long and desire to lose the weight like I did, just to feel better, healthier in their body, mind, and spirit. And
Mhm.
I ask them, do you want to be a sugar burner or do you want to be a fat burner?
Right,
Like, which
right.
one sounds more appealing to you?
Yeah,
If we
yeah.
eliminate the sugar from our way of eating and, adopt more of what I call the sugar-free way of life, then we can tap into that fat store. And that's really where the magic happened for me and happens for my coaching clients every day. So it's a great place to live.
I know it is. And we don't realize that our body has plenty of storage already.
Hmm.
I mean, if you look around the world, look around, go outside, go to the grocery store, you will see plenty of people that have plenty of storage of
Yes.
energy
Yes.
because
Right.
they just need to burn it properly.
Right.
And
Exactly.
that's what we're all really like looking for. So can you give us just the listeners just a little peek into what is your sugar-free method?
Yeah, so in hindsight, as I was developing something to help people, because people started coming to me, at like when you lose a massive amount of weight, people want to they want to tap into that too. So
Want to
I started,
know.
yeah, I started coaching over coffee sessions with local people and just started putting coaching sessions out there, boot camps, challenges. And so I developed the sugar-free method based on what actually worked for me, obviously, how I'm living my lifestyle. And I have 5 pillars to the method that we focus on, and that is food and fasting, feelings, fitness, and it's all by faith. Because apart for me, what I realized is like I never invited God into my journey. I thought it was something that I could control, that I should be able to count the calories, I should be able to use a graph and a chart and all the things. But I learned that apart from my faith foundation, I could really not do this. Like I didn't have something stronger to lean on, to set myself up for
Yep.
success. So yeah, I guide my coaching clients through like proper food and nutrition, and then fasting. We implement fasting. It doesn't have to be a crazy amount of fasting, but again, if you stop eating after dinner time and don't eat again until the next morning when you get hungry, that is really powerful. And then feelings. I know you probably want to talk about this a little bit more, but really, this is was such an emotional journey for me beyond letting go of the control of calorie counting and eating less and moving more. It really was a journey of learning how to regulate my emotions around food. And so I love to, like, that's one of my favorite parts of the journey. And I always tell my coaching clients, I'm like, really, the feelings is going to be and the emotional part, the emotional healing is going to be the most difficult part of the journey, but so well worth it. And then looking back, you can see how emotionally dysregulated I was and how we can learn to regulate our emotions and make proper food choices. Um, and then fitness. I'm not a gym nut. I'm not like, hey, get out there and do this, but I'm talking about fitness of the body, mind, and spirit. And what I learned as I started losing weight was that I actually enjoyed moving my body. And now I do it as like an act of worship and just Thanksgiving that I can move my body now. And by the way, I did go back and climb those mountains.
Oh,
I did make it up to Nymph Lake and the other lakes that were
yes,
beyond that. I forget their names,
yes.
but
Oh, that's wonderful. Because
yeah,
that's a huge triumph anyways, because
yes,
I mean, again, nature, God has made those beautiful trails in nature and
yes.
we're supposed to experience it. It's a very spiritual type just view up there. But yeah, I want to circle back to those feelings because what you're talking about, for a lot of, emotional eating, we don't feel like, hey, maybe our eating is tied to our feelings a lot of times, but it is.
Yeah.
Like I know like okay, if I'm bored, if I'm stressed, if I like, there's certain feelings that I don't tend to eat, but then we often reward ourselves too with food. I mean, I'm one of those that and noticing that for yourself. But
Yes.
it's feelings, but you also touched on like, you know, eat when you're hungry. Like, who knows when you're actually physically hungry?
Yeah.
Is, hey, I see food and oh, I think that looks good. I think I'll have some, kind of deal.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the cues. Like you see the cues, it ignites the cravings that are happening in your brain. And for a lot of us, many of our brains have been hijacked by this addiction, this addictive cycle. Sugar, junk food, those foods are created hyper palatable, meaning they keep us coming back for more. So it is a cycle, but it can be broken. And I'm really a huge advocate of developing new healthy habits. I always say that small habits build and deliver big results, and that's why my sugar-free method is like a step-by-step approach.
Mhm.
But yes, we absolutely can. I want to give people hope that addiction is a disease of the brain.
Right.
And it's not your fault, right? There's so many people that are trapped in addiction. And if you happen to be trapped in sugar addiction, I want to give you hope that you can break free. You can quiet those cravings. You can learn different coping mechanisms, how to respond when you are cued, like when you see a Taco Bell commercial or something like that. You're like, now I want a crunchy gordita. Those things do get easier the more you build these habits and move away from that. Addiction is it's a difficult disease, not just for food and sugar, but addiction is one disease with many different outlets. So
Oh,
growing and maturing, first of all, for me spiritually was really important, but growing and maturing and learning how to regulate emotions and identifying those cues, those cravings, what's
yeah,
happening. We can quiet those. And now I love to say that now that it's been quieted, I call it food serenity. Like I'm
mhm,
not driven by
yeah,
seeing food and wanting to eat it just
yeah,
because it's there.
yeah.
Yeah.
I know because I've experienced that many times, just, you start and stop, you start and stop on
Mhm.
different things. But it is true. I mean, that fasting piece of, just eating when you're hungry, but then taking those physical cues about what it is your body really is asking for. Because if you like, I notice personally, if I like don't eat, like my go-to sweets would be cookies and dessert type things and
Yes.
chocolate and those kind of things. And if I don't eat those, for a few days, a week or something, I'm not like triggered. Like I don't crave it as much.
Yes.
And so the longer you can go, and then the funny thing is for me at least, and maybe this is for a lot of people too, is that once you've not had sugar for a little while or desserts or sweets, and then you have some, it's like super sweet. Like,
Yes.
I don't know, it's just
Yes.
like, whoa, like I didn't realize it was that sweet. You know?
Right. Exactly.
So then you can get those cues for your body. So
Yeah.
that's
And your tastes do change. Like your taste buds do change yeah, it would be absolutely too sweet if I was to eat like a piece of birthday cake or something like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
But yeah, just getting rewiring your brain
Mhm. Mhm.
to like choose foods that are going to properly nourish you, not only just physically, but also emotionally and spiritually. One thing that really surprised me when after I quit the bread, potato, and pasta, I remember I was sitting around the dining room table with my husband about 2 weeks into my commitment to, follow this new way of eating. And I was just like looking around and my brain fog had completely lifted. I had so much mental clarity that I told my husband, I'm like, something really strange is going on. Like, I have so much mental clarity. I have so much energy. It was a new experience for me after being morbidly obese and living in obesity for 30 years. It really does impact your brain health as well, too, to choose
Yeah.
healthy.
Yes. I mean, there and people will find, I hope listeners anywhere, if you've done it before, I'm sure, because we've all done these yo-yo things where
Yes.
at times we have found that it not only affects how we eat, it affects how we think, our processes, our emotional state. We are much less moody, I would say,
Yes.
and that's really helpful for being around other people. And but it changes a lot of things, not just physically, but it changes us mentally, it changes us emotionally, it changes us spiritually. It all encompasses. So if you're struggling, like, how would somebody reach out to you to like, hey, do you have programs? Do you have like a book? Like what if people are like, oh my gosh, I think I need to try this. What do you
I have a lot of different layers of support. First, we talked about cravings earlier. I have a Crush Your Cravings guide available, and I think you're going to put that in the show notes. And also, I have a chapter from my book that just released called SugarFreed: Stop Losing the Weight Loss Battle, Start Gaining the Victory. The free chapter excerpt that I give away is titled, Are You Craving All the Wrong Things? So,
Mm,
like, let's
yeah.
identify that. And
Yes.
then I also do have my sugar-free me weight loss solution program, which is a 13-week program where we link arms. I link arms with you. It's a hybrid. It is group coaching, which is super powerful. I'm so glad I created it as a group coaching program
Oh,
because the transformation that takes place in our group coaching Zoom calls is amazing and
mm,
life-changing.
yeah.
So I do have that available, and they can find access to all of that on my website, which is my name, ChristineTrimpe.com.
Right. I will put all of those in the show notes so people can
Yeah.
easily, tap into that because,
Yeah.
one click and go to it. That's
Yes.
that's awesome. So you have a book that tells all of this, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome.
My book
Awesome.
was like 7 years in the making. It released as I was living at a healthy weight for 7 years. And I'll just tell you a little bit about the structure of it. It is a faith-based book, but I have it broken down into four sections. The first section is called Resolving It. because this is where we all need to move past the contemplative stage and we need to step up to the starting line and do this thing, ladies.
Yep. Yep.
So we talk a lot about that. And then restoring your body is the next section. And that talks a lot about the physical health and healing, a little bit about my story, the chronic diseases that I reversed, and what chronic diseases you can reverse in this journey. And then renewing the mind, the emotional part, right? That is where the hard work really resides. And
Yep.
then the last
Yep.
section is the redeeming your spirit, which is so it's a holistic journey through the book, body, mind, spirit, and yeah, it really is a great place to get started. To, if you really are ready to show up to the starting line and do the work, I
Mhm.
invite you to connect with me there.
Awesome. Awesome. That sounds like an amazing book. And I know we could talk a long, long time about this topic because it is something that we all have struggled with and continue to struggle with. And it's a daily choice. But it's looking ahead to how we want to be in the future. So thank you so much for sharing your story and your wonderful program with us. As we wrap up, is there anything that you would like to leave the listeners with, like something that maybe we haven't touched on that's really, pulling at your heart today, or any kind of thought or quote?
Yeah, you said heart, which is I write a lot about the heart in my book, and it's a key component of my coaching program too. But one of my favorite verses that I love to share is from Psalm 4:7, where David writes, "You have filled my heart with greater joy than when their grain and new wine abound." So for me, somebody that ate, was addicted to food and sugar, like the grain and new wine is very symbolic. Like there
Mhm.
is something out there that can fill our hearts with greater joy than food. So I just hope that that gives some people some hope and inspiration. And I write all about the heart transformation in my book, and I link arms with my clients and take them through the heart transformation in my program as well.
Oh, wonderful. There is so many people that are going to be reaching out to you because of this, because I could just feel the energy and you are just a bright, bright, bright soul and just giving of your story. So thank you so much for joining me today, Christine.
Thank you for having me, Peggy.
Everyone go out, look at the show notes, go get in touch with Christine, grab her sugar-freed book, and, start your own journey to better health. Thank you.